everybody. This is Carrie Graham with the Church Lab, and we are back for part 3 of our Burst Your Bubble videos. And what the point of Burst Your Bubble is essentially to say, pre-pandemic, it was already hard enough to get out of our bubble and to learn from different perspectives, especially different faith and spirituality perspectives. Now that we've been sheltering in place, and oh my goodness, there are just layers of important, pivotal events going on around us that our faith informs deeply. Here we are, sheltering in place at home, many of us even more stuck in our bubbles than before. And so what Burst Your Bubble is about saying, you know what, we will come to you. We're going to bring people from different perspectives to talk about how their faith informs their journey through this season, particularly with the pandemic. We are recording this on June 3rd. There's also been a lot of important movement around issues of race and police in the wake of the death of George Floyd. That may come up today. As it is part of the layers of us living through pandemic times. But that's sort of the gist of what we're doing. This is kind of a teaser for the deeper conversations we get to have with lots of people in the room. Well, we say lots, it's a small group, but more than 2 people in a room where we get lots of different faith perspectives together at once and have a deep dialogue about a given topic. And that is Church Lab's primary event. If you want to get involved with that, we would love to have you. And you can check us out at thechurchlab.org, O-R-G, or you can email me at carrie@thechurchlab.org. That's Carrie like the scary movie, C-A-R-R-I-E. Okay, enough of that. Down to our esteemed guest of honor, who I'm so elated has agreed to share with us today, and that is Curtis Doss, who is representative of the Baha'i tradition. Curtis, I'm just going to let you dive right in. Number 1 of our 10 questions, of course, is kind of, who are you? So please share about yourself.
Okay, well, my name is Curtis Doss, and I've lived here in Austin for almost 40 years. I guess I've been in Texas now for 45 years or something like that. So it's a good chunk of my life was here. My great-grandparents lived here in Texas, so I have roots in the area. I know this because my wife's a genealogist, and she has. We have visited many grave sites here, and to find my relatives, my ancestors. I'm actually an Okie because I was born in Oklahoma, but. So I was there and actually grew up in Northern California. And then I became a Baha'i in 1970. And not long after that, I moved to Argentina for about 5 years or so, and lived there with my wife for till I guess 1977. And then we came back and shortly after moved to Texas, and I've been in Texas, East Texas, Lufkin, for a number of years, and then came to Austin to go to UT and try to get some smarts. I'm not sure that it worked, but I tried anyway. And so my family, my 2 kids, and my wife and grandkids, we're all here in Austin.
That's lovely. That's lovely. This is going to happen with every question, but I just have to say I have 10 more questions. I'll just ask you at a later time. What is a ritual in your tradition, right, or in your worshiping community that at this time, at this moment in time, is really proving helpful to you?
A ritual that I would say part of the what we do, or what I do, is based on my understanding of the Baha'i writings, is to say prayers and read the spiritual writings every morning and every evening. And so I find that trying to do that, trying to remember to do that. Some mornings aren't so successful, but the effort, the thought is that what I should be doing. Anyway, it's there. And, and it kind of is grounding in many ways, because it's, well, I know the first thing in the morning, sometime in the first thing, is to say some prayers, try to practice a little meditation, and read some of the writings. I try to read writings from the Bible, from the Baha'i scriptures, and from the other religions, and think about them. I wish I could say that it has an absolute positive, incredibly illuminating effect on me, and I think the jury's out on that. But at least I'm trying on that. I'm working on it.
I appreciate the honesty of that answer.
Yeah. So I guess also in one of the things that with the Baha'i friends who live in Austin, we try to get together as often as possible for what we call devotionals, which is just meetings to read the writings and say prayers together, and to make that contact, that we're friends, but we make that contact on a spiritual level,
Yeah,
and kind of check in with each other in a time of pandemic too. So
yeah,
um,
stay connected. Um, I'm realizing I can hear my echo at your house, but I sort of feel like it's like just faint enough that I feel a little bit like a fairy princess.
so technically, I'm not sure what we can do about that.
I don't think it's very strong. I think it's okay. It's not any stronger than my dog snoring right now. So if you can't
Okay.
hear Addie snoring, then I think we're in good shape.
Okay. Well,
Um,
my sound bar there might be coming in and adding to it, so I'll try to lower the volume on that. That might help.
sure. Yeah, it's fine. This is something for those of you watching. This is something that's kind of just part and parcel to right pandemic times, to dialogue times, that we just sort of go. We just go with, with
Yeah.
whatever's working. Most
Yeah,
important thing is
it's
we can hear you sharing.
almost every Zoom meeting I go to, somebody's saying, "You're muted. I can't hear you."
Please,
Yes.
please.
There's
Yeah,
always a
exactly.
technical problem.
It's interesting that you bring up sacred texts playing a pretty strong role in your rituals. That the next question is actually around just that. Is there a particular sacred text that is really accompanying you on this journey with the pandemic, or just in this moment in time? Something that's really speaking to you?
Yeah. Well, there are specific prayers for well-being, for healing. Healing is not only seen as the physical healing, but the spiritual healing, the ailments that we have, and many times uh, the physical problems we have are part of the spiritual problem. And if we all of a sudden feel enthused and better, all of a sudden our ailments aren't don't feel as bad as they usually do. But those there that there's one, I guess, that I like. And I was talking to my wife about this, Lisa, about this, and she reminded me of this, and I thought, that's it's a strong text. It's a short, if you'd like me to read it or
Please, please.
something.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a prayer, but it goes, "Oh God, refresh and gladden my spirit, purify my heart, illumine my powers. I lay all my affairs in thy hand. Thou art my guide and my refuge. I will no longer be sorrowful and grieved. I will be a happy and joyful being. O God, I will no longer be full of anxiety, nor will I let trouble harass me. I will not dwell upon the unpleasant things of life.
Mm.
O God, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself. I dedicate myself to thee, O Lord." It's pretty short, but it's one that is I try to remember and use in good times and bad. and, yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Has a very it reminds me of the Psalms in many ways, but it definitely
Mm,
has I felt myself feeling more grounded. The phrase, you are more a friend to me than I am to myself,
yeah.
really stood out to me as so true and um, such a helpful thing to sort of name and say out loud as part of um, a commitment to give God our affairs, even.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Is the next question is if there's a part of your faith tradition's history that is coming to your aid right now that sort of feels
Yeah.
important to reflect on in this moment.
Yeah. Interesting that you asked. 'Cause, well, Baha'u'llah is the founder of the Baha'i faith and was for many, many, many years a prisoner for well over 30 years. And when he wasn't in an actual dungeon or a prison cell, was with under house arrest. And so the the concept I've thought several times about, when I'm especially kind of complaining about, it feels like house arrest, and uh, you know, thinking about, well, it's not for 30 years, and it's not in some place that's where I'm under guard and all that sort of thing. This is just for a few months or whatever time it is, but um, it's not the same. And all that time, uh, people say that you can't do anything. And Baha'u'llah basically created this, it laid out this world religion while under house arrest, kind of like we are. Not that it's to compare it the same, but I wrote to all of the rulers and kings of the world that were present in the 1860s. Wrote hundreds of thousands of letters, many books and volumes, and had him sent out and responded to questions and problems and issues, and did all that confined to several buildings, to one city in particular, that's what's now used to be Palestine, or part of the Turkish Empire, and then Palestine, and now is part of the state of Israel. Um, but so we know exactly where all those years and where all of this came from. And so uh, to create something like that under conditions like this is, is kind of kind of an example.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good things can
Yeah,
be created or birthed out of a time of what appears to be stuckness, right, or stillness.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. That's and I didn't know that. It's fun to continue learning about. Um,
Hmm.
always there are always more things to learn about one another's traditions, right? That
Yes, yeah,
pursue.
yeah. Just when you think you know you got them pigeonholed and you know the history of somebody, and you find out, oh, there's something else there that
Right.
changes the whole, the whole, all the nuances and everything. It changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I so appreciate that. Um, why is your particular faith tradition of importance to you in this season, or not? Or maybe it's not important to you, but if it is, why is that feeling important to you right now?
Um, well, like I said, the understanding of there have been a lot of restrictions put on Baha'is in different parts of the world, and so this is very it's uh, rather small, really, and we still have lots of freedoms to do things and to meet, and we have this wonderful technology now that we can, that even though it seems like the darkest of night, it's really a wonderful age. I mean, because uh, we can communicate instantly, reliably, around the world and see friends and family. And um, yeah, it's when I was talking about this with my wife, and we were recalling when we lived in Argentina. There was no internet. Very few people had phones, and we would have to go down to the post office where all the public phones were and put in a request for the next day to call our parents. And they would say, come back at 2 o'clock tomorrow. And we would go back at 2, and around 4 or 3, an hour, 2 hours of waiting, they'd all of a sudden scream out our name and tell us to go to cabin number 4, and we'd squeeze in the cabin and talk to our parents on a very expensive 5-minute phone call.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
And that would be back in 1974, 75, that era. And and we could do that maybe once a month. Depends if we could afford it or not. And once we talk to our folks and our family once a month. And so now we have this wonderful capability, and we hear everything that's going on, and the good and the bad,
Yeah,
and the truth and the false. So
yeah. All of it.
it's
All of
it's a blessing, and sometimes it isn't. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Um, and how does the importance of your faith tradition sort of intersect with that?
Um, that the things are improving and are moving forward, that there
Mm,
I understand and I believe from what my understanding of the Baha'i writings is that this is where mankind is going. We are not pulling apart and moving from each other. We are uh, moving towards each other, and there's not much we can do about it. It's like we're caught in this current pulling us down river into this, kind of like this mighty sea, where there's, where we will be unified, whether we like it or not, and how much we struggle against it is it's up to us. But uh, so the days of where we had to wait months to get a letter or weeks to send a letter and get a letter and uh, hear news or know about each other. Now it's instantaneous, and that's the struggle, the test of what do we do with this now that we know each other even so much that we're maybe uncomfortable with each other. How do we get over that and get and just get over it and uh, where we're not using our differences as a bludgeon against each other, but as celebration that it's what makes mankind wonderful, and it's also the will of our Creator that we love each other and know each other as one family.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well said. That image of a sea current pulling us forward, right? That
Mm-hmm.
I love that thought about. You might have said downward, but the image, right, is when you say we're always moving forward. That what
Yeah,
sticks in my head is I so often think of forward movement in the scope of
yeah.
humanity as like pushing, right? We're pushing away, we're going uphill, but I love the idea from a deity perspective, like, no, we're moving forward and you may be responding or reacting or coming to, to terms with but little old me, I'm not holding up the line necessarily, right? That there can be
No,
forward motion
yeah.
with or without my approval.
Yeah, it's not waiting on us to approve or like it. Yeah, I guess downward might have been the wrong. I was thinking of rivers going
Right,
downstream
right.
to
Yeah,
but
I
anyway,
got I got you.
hopefully you got the me.
I totally did. I totally did. Not to worry. So
Oh well.
this gets us to a completely different tone. But what is do you have a favorite like meme or gif or joke or something humorous from this this time period? There's not a whole lot of humor in this particular week with everything going on, recognizing around oppression, but certainly in the pandemic has served up some real rich ones. Has anything kept you smiling
Um,
or laughing?
you let me know ahead of time that you were going to ask that, and I was thinking, well, I do not really have just one specific thing. The There's one of the sites on the internet that has a lot of just their photos that come up, some of them are just heartbreakingly tender, and some of them are just hilarious of what people have done, the ingenuity of the maybe the signs that they've created, or I live on a street where it's a one block street, dead ends on each end. And there are about 10 children, and they play together. They're doing their best with the social distancing, but but they all the sidewalks all up and down the block are filled with chalk drawings and saying things. And one of them, the little girl next door, is "Stay safe, everybody," and then she's measured out 6 feet. She said 6 feet apart. Stay safe. Or they've been painting rocks, or they ride like demons up and down the street, just yelling, and that is really joyous to hear that.
Yeah.
So for me, it's some of the funny things and ingenious things that people have done on the internet, but also just the natural things of my neighbors. And they had a cupcake sale the other day. So, yeah, it's kids growing up and trying to, in a difficult time. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing like children style resilience, right?
Yeah.
That's yeah. That's just a wonderful image to have. Thank you. Do you have a non-corona related, movie, song, book, podcast, something so many of us have, in the name of saying pseudo healthy, have said, you know what? I'm going to pick a hobby, or I'm going to go watch this thing on Netflix just to
Uh,
give my brain a little bit of a exhalation moment. Have you had something like that?
a little bit. I think my neighbors are grateful that I am tending to our garden a whole lot better than our front yard. So not even be able to go down to the hardware store or the nursery to get plants. I have been moving plants from backyard to the front yard and from the front yard to the backyard and digging things up and trying to make things look a little more presentable. And it's a slow work, but I find that it's time that I'm not thinking about other things and I'm just working in the yard, gardening and sometimes being amazed that some plants are doing well and how I can move them and they actually seem to be doing better and than they were in the old spot.
Yeah,
So
there's spot.
uh,
Yeah.
and look then like I said, it's nice I can come in and look them up and find out things on the internet that other better gardeners have see what they're doing and so that is rather new. I've always kind of liked it, but I've because of not being really going anywhere, I've put a lot more time into it. And then I try to write and play music. That's something an ongoing effort. Um, I don't feel like I do very well, but I entertain myself.
I'm big into it. I do. See, I
And
get vote in this game. I do think you do very well. I love the gifts that you share with us. It's
yeah,
that's a fun treat for us when you do so.
yeah, but
I do like the shift in. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I do like the whole new spin that you're shifting plants around sort of puts on the idea of blooming where you're planted, right? Like in my head, I kept thinking bloom where you're planted, or just where Curtis moved you. Like if Curtis is moving, just bloom there, and then he might move you. You can bloom there too.
Yes,
I
yeah,
mean, if you think you're not good at gardening, which it sounds like you are, just don't entrust those precious parts
mhm,
of creation to me, because with all the good intentions in the world, they won't make it under my supervision. So
yep.
just remember.
Actually, I have a whole bunch of loquat plants that I'm trying to give away because I've got the squirrels. I have a big loquat tree, and the squirrels take the fruit and bury it and drop it, and the birds, and then these little plants start coming up, and so now there's just not enough room for them all. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would accidentally kill them, but I hope you find the right.
find somebody that can give
Yeah,
the loquat plants a
chance,
nice home.
a fighting chance. So to shift back into some COVID pieces, what's the hardest thing about the season of the virus today, or just today in general?
Um, Yeah, as try as we might, I think all of us. I mean, we have our up days and down days. There's days when I'm just, like I just want to go back to bed or I want to take a nap.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm going to be honest about that's, there's just days that there are those days. And and I know the only solace is that I know that it will pass, and I have to, kind of not dwell on the unpleasant things of life, and try to go on. Just think about, well, there's something else is going to happen, and it'll be better or worse, and and have to deal with it. And though though I know I can be a little bit unpleasant when I'm having a bad day. So that's, it's just, I think it's just, who we are. And but I think that I remember, or I don't remember. Here's something that I don't remember, that I found out that I didn't remember. That when I was about 14, I guess, 14, uh, we had a flu epidemic in the United States in 1968,
Mm-hmm.
and it killed over 100,000 people.
Killed how many?
It killed over 100,000 people. I don't have any memory of that at all. Because I was like these kids on the street. I was 14, and I don't think, there was, the only time we had news was 5:30 afternoon news, and then the 11 o'clock news. I lived on the West Coast, so it was 11 o'clock news. Yeah. And there was no internet. You had newspapers, and the Vietnam War dominated much, especially 1968. Yeah. There were a lot of things going on in 1968. It was kind of a pivotal year in many ways. And so I have no memory. And and my wife, we were talking about, neither one of us have any memory of that. And I was looking on the CDC website, and they were talking about the 1957 flu epidemic, which I had heard about. Yeah. And of course, everybody's heard about the 1918. But so things I think will change. That we will be changed by this, and but I am hopeful that it will help us remember that this is something we are all going through. In my lifetime, there have been few things where you could go anywhere in the world and you could say, what were you doing when this happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
When I was young, many years ago, everybody would. There was something that people would sometimes say is, "Where were you when you heard John Kennedy was shot?" And we shared that moment. But I'm older now, and a lot of the folks who passed on, who were adults, or there are many of the people who were too young to. It's just a historical point. Yeah. But now we have all over the world people in all these countries that when we see them, we have a shared experience. And it is a shared human experience that I think that I'm hopeful that will be part of the silver lining of, to use a cliche, but that'll be something that will.
Yeah, that our struggle will connect.
Carry.
Yeah, yeah.
And we can share our experiences, ask each other these same questions. Where were you? How did it feel? What were you thinking? What made you laugh?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and to that end, the next question is, what is to you, and maybe you've answered it, right? What is to you the best thing about this moment in history, this COVID season?
Yeah. Yeah, and considering how many people have lost their loved ones, and how many people, the couple of folks I've seen that relate what this sickness is like, is that it is terrible. It's like really like being beat up. So even if you have it and are quite healthy, you may come out the other side. It may take quite a while to get over it. So um, that acknowledging that and looking at that, I think that I am hopeful that we'll um, have something that in common. It help us realize that once again we are all one human family, and that we share the one. We don't. It's not just one group of people or one nation or one area that is suffering. Uh, and also realize that when one area starts to slip and suffer, none of us are safe.
Yeah.
None of us, no, no country, no group of people can be safe while others are in misery.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that applies to many things going on right now, right? Certainly in the brokenness of our um, the dynamics of race that we're seeing happening, the inequities brought on by the virus. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as you're speaking, I'm just thinking of all these layers and how it applies to every piece of it.
Yeah, yeah. I have been having spent many years in Latin America and visited there many times. I am very much aware of the potential for a lot of suffering there, and that not that it hasn't already had some, but um, the potential is great, and I worry about the folks there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, in the midst of that, in the midst of the worry and the uh, global nature of everything that's going on, when it comes back to you and how you're taking care of yourself in the midst of all this, what's you know one, two, three things that are helping you take good care of yourself?
Um, yeah, music, trying to my own music and listening to music. I like a lot of music, but there's some that I haven't listened to in a long time. So YouTube, thank you for putting tons and tons and Pandora and different of music out there that I can listen to in good when I'm feeling good or not so good, and hear things or get reacquainted with artists and find new artists that are just amazing. Yeah, that is big. I have to mention because my wife said I should, she said she said that question definitely that I have been enjoying the Netflix version of Lost in Space.
Yes, yes.
Sharing my guilty pleasure.
There you go. Hey, that's self-care. That is self-care. Absolutely.
She said I should say that. So I said, no, I'm not going to say that. That's not. But anyway, so far it is. I have just it because I watched the old version when I was a kid. So, many years ago. So that's one of the things that we have laughed about it. How come you enjoy that so much? That and also the Twilight Zone.
Ooh, nice, nice. See, well, and I think we all have our jams, right? Like, and in some cases it feels random, and in some cases not. But
Yep.
I think right now, if we can catch on to what it is that will allow us to have some fun, to have a
Yeah.
laugh, to in a recuperative way, man, Lost in Space, go for it. Whatever it is, hopefully legal. Go for it. Yeah.
It's stuff that I wouldn't have maybe not spent so much time or have been able to do that
Yeah.
before. And, it's not something I necessarily think is the best use of my time. But anyway,
It's fun. It's
there
fun.
it is.
I think it's great. So, are there any other thoughts or comments that you want to conclude with? That takes us through the questions, the 10 questions otherwise.
Yeah. Um, no, it's I understand there's a lot of sadness in the land, and people's hearts are heavily troubled. And one of the things that uh, because of where we are, of the limitations, um, I think the refuge I have right now is attending some of the devotional meetings with the Baha'i friends, and having discussions, much kind of like this, where we trade, what is it that's, how are you doing, just to check in, and the the and making plans for the future, thinking that this there are stories to tell and songs to sing, and we will share them together.
Yeah.
And we need to keep that in mind. And so hopefully we will be able to meet together at the Church Lab Center in the Mueller Airport neighborhood, uh, and gather there as friends. And in the meantime, keeping touch with each other. I really enjoy hearing from the folks in other states,
Yeah.
from North Dakota and Virginia, and 9 miles south of the Washington Monument. I did not know that till
Yeah.
this last month. That love that, and the people there. And so um, that's I really don't have a whole lot.
Great. And I really, really appreciate all that you've shared. Um, I think the images you've created in many of your responses today um, has has framed this season up with some wisdom and some perspective and some beauty that I think others will be encouraged by. So I thank you so much for spending this time and hanging out. Um, it's been a real pleasure to get to hear from you. And just like Curtis said, for those of you who may want to join us and add your state into the mix, or you can be in Texas or in Austin too, of course. But we look forward to um, time spent and songs sung in the future together. Um, yeah.